let's talk a little bit about using Python libraries. We're going to talk specifically about the random library today, and I'm going to show you some examples from it, but I'm also going to introduce you to the concept of what a library actually is. So what is a library in Python? You've heard this word before, and you're probably imagining that I'm talking about a bunch of books, but you would be wrong. A library in Python is something a little bit different. So let me give you an easy to understand analogy for what a Python library really is. When we think about vanilla Python, that's the version of Python that you use on Replit or the one that you would have on your computer if you just installed it from the basic installation online. That's what we call vanilla Python. And you can think about vanilla Python as a hammer. Let's say you have a buddy that comes up and wants to build a house. You think, well, yeah, I would love to help you. But they say, you've only got a hammer. How are you going to help me build a house with just a hammer? And so that's where the idea of internal libraries come in. So an internal library in Python is like a full toolbox. It gives you access to all the tools you might need to do a little bit of extra work with Python that's beyond just the basic programming stuff. And then your customer says, hey, yeah, we could build a small woods cabin or a cabin in the woods with this, right? You've got a little toolbox, we can probably get something simple done. But let's say they have something a little more grandiose in mind. So in order to build this really complicated, complex, and much more advanced project, we can't rely solely on Python and just internal libraries. We need something more than just our little toolbox. That's when we start to think about external libraries. So external libraries are these much more powerful and advanced tools that can allow us to accomplish far more with our code than we can with just internal libraries or vanilla Python. So let me be really clear. Vanilla Python is all the basic tools for writing very basic programs. It's what's there when you first run a new REPL. It's what's there, it's what's available to you when you first create a new Python program if you have it installed on your computer. Internal libraries are extra tools used for very common programming tasks. And external libraries are highly specialized tools for specific programming tasks, and we often associate these external libraries with actual career fields. And I'll talk about some examples shortly. So let's go over these in a little more detail. Vanilla Python, like I said, that includes all the basic tools for writing very basic programs. There are no extra steps required to use the tools that are associated with vanilla Python. It's what we've been using in class all this time. Now, when I say vanilla Python, I want to be clear. There is no official title for just regular Python other than Python, right? But we want a word that helps us differentiate from Python with extra stuff and without. So a lot of programmers use the term vanilla Python. It's very basic, okay? Some examples of the tools you get with vanilla Python you're already familiar with. Things like len to get the length of a string or a list or some other iterable, we call them. We've got the print function. We got the sum function to give us the total of an iterable, max, string to convert values to strings. These are basic tools that come with every Python installation. Internal Python libraries are these extra tools that we use for very common programming tasks. So these are things that only require an import statement, and I'm going to show you what that is shortly with the random library. So some examples of internal Python libraries are random, for creating the sense of randomness in our programs, math, for doing some advanced math work, time, which lets us work with time in a very simple way. There's actually another library, I didn't put it on here, called datetime, which we're going to learn about, which allows us to do much more advanced work with what we call time objects. And then there's the OS library, which has to do with your operating system. External Python libraries are highly specialized tools for specific programming tasks or jobs. These tools do not come with a standard Python installation. In fact, not only do you have to use an import statement with an external Python library, you have to actually install it on your computer. Or if you're using Replit, it's really simple, and I'll show you a quick example right after we look at random on how easy it is to use external Python libraries with Replit. Some examples of external Python libraries are Beautiful Soup, which is used to scrape the web. That's where we go out and we look at millions or billions of web pages at a time and gather their data and analyze that data. That's part of what Beautiful Soup can do for us. Obviously, that's kind of a job. If you think about what a software developer might do, that's a very specific job. Another example of an external Python library is Pygame. So Pygame is used for very basic game development. Now, there aren't any actual, well, I won't say any actual, but there aren't a lot of, popular games written with Pygame. Pygame's more of a learning tool, kind of experimental tool, but I have actually seen one Steam game that was built using Pygame, which I thought was really cool. It had something to do with a potato. And then lastly, another great external library is Newspaper, which is used for what we call natural language processing. It can basically analyze a news article and immediately tell you like what the headlines are and what the themes of the article are. It can actually do that programmatically, which is really cool. And there's about 250,000 more external Python libraries for these very specific and interesting jobs that are out there on the internet. And if you're curious about what you can do with Python, which is basically anything, you can check out a website called pypy.org. And if I click my link here, it'll take me there. And you can see that there are currently 265,850 projects on PyPy. Now, notice it says Python package index. I do want to say that people use different terms for talking about Python libraries. Some people would say they're modules. Some people say they are packages. Some people say they are libraries. They all basically mean the same thing. So don't get caught up on the different language. We're all talking about basically the same thing, extended functionality for our programming language. Going back to our slides,